this computer. Good. I hate it when I hit forget. So this is a Plainfield Planning Commission meeting on August 4th, 2025. We'll call the meeting to order and we'll start the agenda with a motion to approve the minutes.
Yeah, I motion to
Second,
approve the
second,
minutes.
Karen?
Yes.
Okay, any discussion on the minutes? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the minutes are approved. We have Lorraine Banbury here from our neighboring town, and she's also a representative of the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission as a regional planning consultant. And I had contacted her with trying to get some ideas about the definition of applicant, because that was where we got hung up at the last meeting. And I had sort of I can't minimize it when I'm recording the meeting. Thank goodness. So I sent out a definition of an applicant, and it basically, I'll just paraphrase it. It says the applicant is the owner of the land or the person with also authorized representation of the land to apply for the permit. And then I said the permit will be issued to the current or future landowner. And Charlie, I think you were the one who sort of mentioned that it should reference the owner and where the permit goes. And even though that's somewhat implied by stating it categorically, it clears it up.
Yeah,
do you think so?
That was for two reasons. One of which was there was a discussion in front of the DRB that a preliminary request that had the applicant different from the owner. And at that point, the DRB recognized the different applicant, and how the owner related to that was unclear. And secondly, the form that you fill out for the DRB seems to indicate that they want the owner to go in. So those were just the stimulus for the question. And I certainly have a philosophical point of view that the owner is the one that really should be the applicant, even though the owner can be represented by counsel or an agent, and that might be appropriate. But that agent is not applying, is not going to get the permit. The owner is going to get the permit.
So, Karen or Lorraine, do you want to chime in with some thoughts on this?
Oh, I'm happy. Karen is the expert in your town. I'm just here to tell you how we do it in Marshfield, but Karen is your expert.
Yeah, well, I think what we discussed last time is that basically in any proceeding, there could be the owner can do it all, or the owner for a subdivision, the permit application is so complicated that they're going to have to hire somebody to do it, and in often cases that's going to be from soup to nuts, and the owner's just going to give authorization for that professional party to be the applicant. So it's go ahead, Karen.
So historically, hello.
Yep.
Historically, in the town of Plainfield, the DRB is allowed for an applicant to be the developer or the, Chase and Chase or whoever who's like doing all the work for the subdivision, and having permission from the owner to have them do all that. So that's historically what we've done. Did you hear what I said?
Yes, right. We got it. And I think that's what most towns do from the research that I did. I was sort of thinking it conceptually as being there's a passive party and an active party, and the active party could be the owner, or the active party applicant could be the professional advisors, and the owner is still the applicant, but is in a passive way in terms of the subdivision review. So
absolutely.
how to put that in words. And then it's not always clear whether, I mean, it's clear in the zoning professional world that the permit follows the land. But it's not always, it doesn't hurt to have that clarified in your zoning regulations. As you read through them, yeah, the permit goes with the land. So, you know, I looked at a lot of different applications or applicant definitions in zoning, and they're all different. And Lorraine, I mean, the Regional Planning Commission, boy, it would help the little towns if there were like some stock definitions that were well tested, like our proposed definition of person is essentially the Act 250 definition, listed right out of the statute. It doesn't go into all the details, but basically A, B, C, D, and E are right out of Act 250. Now, the advantage of using tested language in your local regulations is that if you ever have to go to litigation with it, the judge doesn't have to, the town doesn't have to spend a lot of time defending your language. It's tested language, and the judge, we can bypass that definition person and go right to the other features, where if we create our own unique language around person, we may have to spend a lot of time describing that. So stealing from state statute is a time-honored tradition in zoning, and I highly endorse it. Because the definitions of zoning in during the last meeting, the person definition was also had some comments that it wasn't quite clear, but I think it's not quite clear, but it's state statute. So can we come up with a, you know, the language I sent out, I just made it up. I feel like that we should try to find some. Callus was good, but I went through some emails with Lorraine that Callus was pretty limiting in its definition. You know, you want to encompass all the possibilities and keep it as simple as possible, in my humble opinion. Because after reading enough of these, and David, you read a lot of them.
Yeah,
they're all different.
They're all different. There's some common stuff.
Yeah.
But I agree, they're all different. There's a couple of the things that are different that I have a hard time parsing. Some of them refer to applicant, and some as the primary word that gets used and some use the word subdivider.
We clean that up in the draft. It's all one together.
I know that, but what I mean is that some towns choose to use the word subdivider. Some, at first, I am actually partial to subdivider, but then I decided it doesn't really make a difference as long as the applicant is recognized as the person applying for the subdivision permit.
But the owner is ultimately the applicant, because the landowner will get the permit. The landowner could be different. One, you know, the land could be transferred during the proceeding. The land transfer could be contingent on the reception of the opponent.
Right.
But it's attached to the deed. It follows the deed.
I mean, what you wrote more or less, I think, distills to the points that Charlie made last week. It definitely ties the applicant to the owner. Yeah. That is definitely important. I think that it will probably comes more into play. All of that stuff comes more into play in phase 2 as opposed to the sketch plan.
Sure, but it's going to be
some extent.
It's once you start the process, you define the parties' roles, and you know, the owner and the applicant could be, you know, it's like building a building. You have a contractor and subcontractors. Right. You could have Chase and Chase doing a subdivision. You could hire other people to do wetlands and all that stuff, but they're ultimately the applicant operating with due authorization from the owner.
I think, you know, last meeting I made the case that the applicant, using your definition now, that the applicant should be present at the meeting. You know, I know, I think it's probably unrealistic,
It's a nice
I
thought.
would like it. I appreciated that you put and or.
Yeah.
Because that at least,
Sure.
and I think it's something that the DRB, if they were, you know, the more I'm getting familiar with all these things, you know, the DRB has a lot on its plate and in a big subdivision
Mhm.
like this, which has never been done in Plainfield, I don't think.
It's, yep,
And-
referencing the East Village.
And I think that both one of the changes we made to the, or we're talking about making to the sketch plan would be a formal hearing. And I think, you know, something neighbors and the DRB could say, you know, we'd really like to meet in person with the, with the owner.
we did move the warning up to the sketch plan.
Yeah, and I think that's really,
Right
that's
up-
super important.
Right up front.
I have a couple other comments when we get to that.
Okay.
But more or less, I went over yours proposal, I looked at all the other ones that I had looked at, and, you know, I think it's as reasonable as any of them. It kind of covers everything.
Yeah.
It ties the applicant to the owner, as Charlie pointed out, and, you know, I think the sketch plan review could still be a mess, but in terms of, you know, the projects where there's, like the East Hill project, where it's, you know, there's so much in transition and so much undefined and all of that, but that I don't think there's much we can do about that other than say, you know, the owner has to be the applicant and
represent
for the DRB to enforce all the things that are required for the sketch plan, which is a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. So Charlie, does that sort of answer your concerns? I see.
It certainly addresses them fairly regularly.
Okay.
Can you hear?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it certainly addresses them. I have 2 points. One of which is I want to make sure that the applicant or the receiver of the subdivision has to be an owner at some point.
Has to be what?
Separate the permit from the owner, you create a Pandora's box. Okay? That's that one point. The second point is, and it's specific to this situation, the preliminary sketch map that was applied or went to before the DRB for this East Village expansion project was presented to the DRB by a person who had no formal association with the applicant. The applicant at that point was an ad hoc committee that was unincorporated, that had no formal standing. And the person that was presenting it had no formal connection other than they were part of that informal committee. And so I really think, and at that point, the DRB accepted that because there was a person standing before them that had permission, actually a letter from one owner and an email by a third party about what they'd heard from a second owner. And to me, that was inappropriate. That was not authorization by the owners. And it wasn't clear what the owners were authorizing. So just be aware that we have, or you have before you, a request or an opportunity to set a procedure that up to this point has been problematic.
Thanks, Charlie. One thing I'll note is if we revise the zoning so the sketch plan review is an application for a subdivision, then all those the definition the formal relationship has to be presented.
All right. Some of my comments are moot, but they're examples of what was tried and now returned.
Right. Well, we're trying to fix it.
I think, Charlie, you know, I'm not being a lawyer. It's a little hard, but I think that as written, this definition of applicant would preclude what happened at that. Now, what it doesn't preclude, and I think that you know, that because Plainfield is in a position that we've never been in before, and the DRB is not composed of experts in subdivision or land use, at least to the best of my knowledge, as you know, you know, there's a lot of latitude and a lot of you know, the one thing that we're planning on doing is that we're adding to the sketch plan review process that it would be a formal hearing, and that it would include, you know, notification to all the abutters and all of that stuff, which was not there before. And I think that could also be very helpful. You know, there were people.
I agree with you. I think the direction you're going is invoking appropriate procedure by the appropriate parties to apply for subdivision. I would hope that it gets into the text of the zoning, or the current text of the zoning, interpreted to accommodate those things. And just this is a tangent, but this isn't unique. When the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission applied to put a second retention pond below the health center, they applied, the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission. The applicant was the health center. The health center never showed up at any of the hearings, or, if I'm aware, ever gave a letter to authorize the use of their land. So there is a precedent, actually, for the applicant not to be owned in Plainfield.
I wonder if we could put in to not the definition, but in the, you know, the description of what the DRB's responsibility is in reviewing the sketch plan, something like that the DRB can request the owner or applicant to be present at something.
They probably could, but there's so many, I mean, they can request it, but it's so many, there's so many extenuating circumstances of owners. So, you know, the owner could be somewhere else. So you can, I'm not sure you can require it.
Okay.
That's the difference.
Excuse me, one more comment.
I can't.
This is going to be a formal hearing before DRB, this kind of thing. At a formal hearing, an applicant can authorize an agent to speak for them, a lawyer, a developer, or whatever. That doesn't mean that the lawyer is going to get the permit.
Right. I think that's clear in this definition. The applicant up for the permit is the owner of the land or property proposed to be subdivided or developed.
Perfect.
I think that's clear. Now, there's always, you know, there's always ways to get around these things. So what could happen at some point in some future thing is that the owner could apply and then get the permit and then sell the land to whoever, and they would get the permit.
Still goes with the
I don't
land.
see how you could stop that.
Still goes with the land.
Right.
So think of it as being pinned to the deed.
The thing that I started thinking about was when does in this process, previously the formal permit application and fee came with the preliminary plat. And I think in Sandy's revision, it comes with the
sketch plan.
No, I think it comes, I think it's in the,
preliminary.
yeah, I think it comes in with the final plat.
Yes.
And so that's a point when there's got to be somebody serious involved, because if it's a big subdivision, it's a pretty expensive permit.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not in relation to the project, but still, like, if you're talking about 50 lots, it's $5,000.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to me that it would have some bearing on somebody who's involved being, but anyway.
Karen, you want to make any comments in terms of what you think about the new language?
I was writing something in the chat because my thing is not working very well. But in the past DRB, I haven't. So this is the beginning of what I was writing. Typically, the decisions for both like a subdivision or any conditional use permit runs with the land. So it's not who the applicant is, it's not who the owner is, it's actually goes with the property. So in owners of, like, when someone's doing, okay, let's do Fred Meyers. Most of you don't know anything about it, but it's, he had like an 8-lot subdivision, and he hired Chase and Chase to do all of it. And so he wasn't around much, but he had authorized Chase and Chase to do all the paperwork and everything. And Chase and Chase's who came and represented him at all the meetings. And we didn't see Fred, but he had authorized Chase and Chase to do all the work. So Fred passes away. All the members of his family get lot 1 through 8 or 6 or whatever it was. And then it had conditions that said blah, 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 blah. So anybody that came in for lot 1 or 2 or 3 of this large subdivision that Fred Meyer had done had to follow the conditions. So it runs with whatever the subdivision is, whatever the conditions are, runs with the land. So in the end, it's not who the owner was or who the applicant was. It's, this is what has to happen with this piece of property in this subdivision. And a conditional use permit, 16 Main Street, which is owned by Tom Stuckis, which now has can't remember the church, but it also has a healing thing. Whenever he changes his people who are renting those lots, he has to come in for a change of use for conditional use. It's not that Tom Stuckis owns it or that whoever's renting the place. It's at 16 Main Street. Whatever happens there is based on 16 Main Street. So in the long run, it's not the owner, it's not the applicant, it's the permit that is been assigned to that property. So it's the land. The permit goes with the land or the building or whatever.
So how do we craft the language for applicant and the language describing how the permit travels through time attached to the deed? What's some appropriate language for that?
It basically says this permit runs with the land.
I'm not sure runs with the land is a common enough frame.
Well, you wrote.
Well,
yeah.
I'm just telling you, I'm just saying the assumption is, and I have seen in Sasha Thayer's old ZBA,
sure,
runs with the land.
Right. Okay, so, well, I think we've got the concept down. Lorraine, would you be willing to take that language and sort of throw it around the Regional Planning Commission's office, maybe write it on a paper airplane and throw it in all the offices and see what comes out?
I was just going to say, it seems like the real challenge was, and Charlie, I'm appreciating what you're talking about now, that these people applied who weren't authorized by the owners. So it sounds as if, the cart got way out ahead of the horse. So this is a really sticky wicket, right? When you have someone or you don't have permission of all the owners, or do you have permission of all the owners? I have the challenge when it's one of my many churches in Marshfield coming in, like, how do I know that this person is actually authorized to make an application on behalf of the church as to what to do with the church property? So that's where it kind of gets a little bit tricky, I think, is with this idea of authorization. Who's authorized to make the request? Who's authorized to allow that applicant to be the person? So I will certainly ask, but I don't know how helpful we're going to be to you in terms of it. I will ask. And it sounds like, given what you guys have going on in Plainfield, as your neighboring ZA, not with my regional planning commission hat on, I would be having a conversation with your attorney. I would ask your select board, can we have 45 minutes with our town attorney? And, there's a lot at stake for you guys. And for me, I mean, I'm literally looking at Laura's house, and behind that is the land that we're all talking about. So you have so much going on. I would suggest you use that resource.
Okay, that's something, well, I'd like, see what you can, if you can find something, just some opinions, and that'll give us a little more broader stroke to ask with the attorney.
And just to let you know, it was even more complicated because the owner actually did give permission, written permission to the person who was presenting the application, but the person presenting the application had no formal standing. The owner gave permission for that to happen, but the owner was not planning to be the subdivider, nor was the individual who was making the presentation. So it was just it was a kind of strange circumstance that I hopefully won't be repeated, although there's no guarantee. But I think this language would help a little bit because it assumes that the owner, I mean, I don't know that we can do much better.
Well,
I think that what you're asking, I think that the RPC, if this were tasked to me and I'm very new there, would be similar to the process that you went through, Will, seeing what other people have used. You looked at Act 250. I looked at what we have in Marshfield. It's, about half the length of what you guys are talking about now. I would really encourage you to, because there's a lot at stake and this has been a sticky wicket. I would just suggest that talk to your town attorney, get an expert opinion instead of, for the $100 that it's going to cost you in
I'm not
terms of
sure
half
our
an hour.
town attorney would be the one. I do know, it was run by Christian at the Central,
Yes.
and he said, this is perfect for Vermont League of Cities and Town, ask
And then they
them.
bumped you back to us. Yes.
Yeah.
Because no one wants to give you legal advice, Will. So VLCT is saying to you, this is beyond the scope of our free municipal legal. And then you're asking CVRPC, and we're saying we're not lawyers. And what you
Yes.
guys need is the opinion of a lawyer. It sounds like.
And what Central Regional Planning Commission should think about is giving sample, the person definition is perfect. It's Act 250. Maybe I'll have to go back and look at their definition of applicant. But if there's tested language, that's the best.
Yeah.
That's the best.
But I think that the challenge would be what CVRPC thinks is tested language. What if we don't agree with your town attorney? We don't want to be in a position where So you pay your attorney to have an opinion for you.
Okay.
It sounds like Plainfield needs an opinion for Plainfield.
Marshfield subdivision regs was that if I read it correctly, there was a clause that said if a subdivision application required the DRB to consult with an attorney, that the applicant would have to pay for that consultation. And I thought that was like Plainfield doesn't have that.
We should put that
And
in.
I think that would be really helpful.
Have you ever enforced that, got money for it?
I've been CA for 2 years. I literally wrote my first permit the day of the 2023 flood. And I think that I've done only 6 subdivisions, and they've all been very straightforward. Karen is your expert.
Yeah, okay. Well, it
Karen
sounds like a good idea to
knows
me.
how it's all worked. Karen knows all the ways that it hasn't worked. Like, use your resources, and that's Karen. And then in terms of crafting legalese, use your legal resources.
Yeah.
But we're not going to be able to give you legal advice, is my sense. I will go back, I will double
Yeah,
check.
yeah, I'm just not on legal advice. I'm saying just sample language.
Yeah, yeah.
Other than like, if all the towns have different definitions, isn't that an issue? In the region, in the region, every town has a completely unique definition of applicant. And they're all like spending as much time as we are. I mean, it's sort of an interesting conundrum in my mind.
So I think the thing that came up that's hard, or maybe has driven this discussion, was the village expansion project. And kind of what happened is, in the past, we've always had an owner authorizing a chase and chase or some sort of surveyor, company, whatever. This is the first time where we had 2 owners, the village expansion, whatever committee, who then was using Sandy as their representative. So it was like this 3-tiered. And I think when we got to that 3rd tier, the 2 owners, this committee or whatever, and then this 3-tier. So this is the first time that having a owner versus an applicant has been more complicated, because in the past I've always had a situation where the owner has given authorization to the applicant, who might be chase and chase or whoever. So this is the first time that there's a 3rd tier. So that's when it became more problematic, I think, with the language.
Okay, yeah, certainly it showed a lot of.
Sandy was representing, right? So to me, that's why this became a much larger issue or situation than all the subdivisions I've done over the years. Like, I've done a lot of subdivisions, a lot of boundary line adjustments, a lot of conditional use where applicants, are not the owners, but the owners give permission. So the 3rd tier of having Sandy represent the village expansion committee, and that was really raised the big question, is that 3-tier situation.
Okay, well, I guess we need to do more research on that. One of the items from the last agenda item from the last meeting was about talking about the 0-degree setback for townhouses and how that impacts condominium ownership versus fee simple ownership in townhouses. So 2 buildings joined together, but each building is independently owned with land underneath it. And apparently the idea behind that is that you could build a duplex, but the financing for that duplex may not be possible, or may not be get the advantageous rate. And it's pretty complicated looking into that issue. My only thought is, if it makes it easier, and there's no downside to having a 0 setback on a duplex building when it's a conjoined building, then it should be allowed. There are zoning, and I can't bring it up on my computer now because I can't minimize that thing. I can send it out, and it's how buildings have if they're joined, they have a 0. They don't need a side yard. They can be joined, but they need a yard on either side of the building. So we're not saying it's basically a townhouse. The difference is it's not a condominium, it's fee simple ownership of property. That's the issue. It's an oddball thing. It doesn't happen very often because most of these are townhouses, rentals, or condominiums.
Well, yeah, I mean, it doesn't, makes sense to me. I mean, what,
It comes down to financing.
normal financing.
FEMA, yeah,
Normal, no problem.
Yeah.
There's no
Yeah.
problem getting normal financing.
Yeah.
We have experience with that.
Yeah.
If the FHA financing will finance, as I read it,
yeah,
will finance a duplex
Yeah.
on one piece of property.
Yeah.
But there has to be an HOA.
Yeah.
And the HOA can't have certain kinds of, restrictions. It's not, it can have restrictions, but it can't have certain kinds of
so
restrictions.
it's the determining factor is the existence of an HOA for the financing. That's
I
the way
think
you're reading it.
that is one of them.
Okay.
There's other ones too. I don't know all of them.
Okay.
It's pretty dense.
It is pretty complicated.
As I've said before, I have no objection
Yeah.
to an HOA. One thing I don't understand is that, yeah, maybe it's for certain people, it would be advantageous for the financing, but they have to buy a lot.
Yes.
And so that takes away any a duplex on a single lot.
Yes.
Is going to be a lot less expensive than a duplex on two lots. So I don't quite understand where
The idea, and it goes back to the village expansion, is that you have a small lot and one building on it that is two dwellings, and each dwelling, so it's essentially.
saying the lots would then be split in half.
Yeah,
So that
yeah, but the building doesn't.
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. So, but
So you own half the you own half the building and the lot underneath it. And I mean, maybe there's a big advantage, maybe there's not, but right now, if you have to have a setback between the lot and the building,
5
you
feet.
can't do it.
Right.
5 feet, but that's not a dense building.
Right.
That's not a common wall.
You know, my sense is that this is a way to avoid having an HOA, and
Yeah.
I don't think that that's a good thing.
It may not be.
Better to have an HOA.
Yeah, but it just, my conception is it just gives more options, perhaps.
I'm not.
What's that?
I have to go with him.
Oh, okay.
I can't envision myself buying a lot and then sharing a common wall.
Well, that's what you do when you buy a townhouse. There's just an HOA
lot.
in it. Yeah.
I mean, we used to, where I have a subdivision, we used to have an HOA, and then 6 or whatever, they disbanded it, which has been a pain in the ass since it got disbanded, because any common, unless it's really clear how you're going to pay for any of the common repairs, like you deed thing going on, even if you didn't have an HOA. I mean, seriously, I can't conceive of why. Like, have somebody who is doing this somewhere else give us a reason why this is a good idea.
Oh,
I really want to see some testimony about why this is a good idea.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll leave that again.
And I'll say also, you can also have FHA financing,
Yes.
which of course people have to qualify for.
Yes.
Without it being a condominium, if the loan is if it's one loan. So in other words,
For the building.
there can be 2 signers.
Yeah.
One loan for the building, there can be 2 signers. So
Okay.
if you and I wanted to have a duplex.
Yeah.
We could get, if we were qualified, we could get an FHA loan without an HOA
Yeah.
if we had one loan that we both signed.
So you just co-sign the loan for the building.
Yeah. So
Okay.
there are ways to do it.
Okay.
I just am very, I don't want to get too focused on tailoring
Right.
the way I think about these things to the East Hill project.
Right.
But,
Okay.
there was a promise there that, we're never going to have an HOA.
Well, that could change.
And I could, and in my opinion, particularly if it's a PUD, it probably should change.
If there, yeah.
And, so I think doing something that is, you know, at least partially, if not largely, to avoid having an HOA, I'm not.
Yeah, well,
I don't feel
it was
comfortable.
more with the financing than HOA, but because it's a complicated subject, we're certainly not
It
going to
is
solve it.
complicated.
Moving on. I sent out a letter, because the,
Guys, it seems like the part where I can be useful is
yeah, you don't
ended,
need to, we're moving
which
on.
is to say that I was not useful at all, but it's lovely to
No,
meet.
get a lawyer helps. It's good,
I'm
always
so
good advice.
sorry.
Always
I'm
good
so
advice.
sorry I'm just thinking that if Christian told you to go to VLCT and VLCT is telling you to come back to us, I think that and this is not wearing either one of those hats, but just as a mediator, people are very emphatic that they are not practicing law without a license. So
Yeah,
maybe
VLTC said basically this is drafting new regulations, which is perfect for the Central Florida Regional Planning Commission. And
I
of
will
course,
double
Christian,
check tomorrow. I promise I will. But thank you
okay.
guys for inviting me. I will follow up if I have any different information for you. And Karen, it's always nice to see you. Thank you for doing God's work in Plainfield. I'm so grateful.
You're welcome.
Bye, guys.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, Charlie, we're not, I think we address your concern. You're welcome to hang in here.
I have a conference to get back to, so I wish you good luck and
Okay.
put me on your mailing list.
Okay, I will. Thank you. Okay, so the neighborhood development area, when we designed the boundaries, we designed it including all of that. Because our zoning says in the village, if you're within 200 feet of a sewer line, you got to connect. Otherwise, you're 2-acre zone, unless you connect. But there's no requirement to connect. So they decided, the MDA staff said, you can only do this little area of Goddard. Goddard's not going to put on a septic system, right? It's totally unrealistic. So the letter was for this pre-application or this boundary line adjustment application to include all of Goddard, to use all of their capacity, up to their capacity, if they're willing to extend the lines to where they want to. Seems pretty easy. You and Karen endorse the letter? Okay, thank you.
And it is the area in question the library and arts building?
Yes, it's that whole corridor up there.
Right.
And conceivably, he could go down to Clay Hill and put a pump station. He's not going to do that. That's crazy. I mean, maybe, but it's in the floodplain. But there's
Maybe a little crazy.
Yeah, it is a little crazy, but there's a lot of room there. It's very constrained the way it is. And the other thing is, when we said, were you going to be in the village district? You're going to be in the NDA. And we thought, well, oh, great. And it's not, because of this funny dichotomy in the village zoning. Really, we could resolve this by a number of ways, just having the village zoning just be within that 200 feet buffer line. Or the wastewater commission is going to, make that decision. But I think that's reasonable. And the other item is Karen and I are going to meet with, is it Tim we're going to meet with, Karen? Is he the guy filling out these?
I don't know. Is there, do we have a meeting yet?
Not yet. Remember, you asked him to fill out that Excel spreadsheet or that little sheet. He hasn't done that yet. You haven't heard a thing from him, have you?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean that. So I mean, whatever. I'm off for 2 weeks, right?
Oh, okay.
So,
you mean you're off of school for 2 weeks?
I'm off for 2 weeks, and I would like to have a meeting at 10 o'clock in the morning. But at the same time, I'm here today, and I'm here prior to tomorrow because I have a site visit I got to do. But I am going to be heading off to the lake, and I don't have crap, I don't have phone or, there. So it would be really helpful if the meeting was set up between now, and I go back to work on the 18th. And I'd like to do a morning meeting like at 10.
Sure. Oh, but we want to get you when you're not on the lake. So I'm going to send Mike, and I don't have Tim's email, but I'll send Mike. I'll get him and just say let's get going. We're going to meet with Karen. All we got to do. I mean, it's really kind of frustrating that they haven't followed through on this stuff when it's pretty simple.
I didn't follow. This is Goddard not following through on the permits that they're.
Yeah.
They wanted me to give a very large blanket permit, which I was really uncomfortable with because we don't really have that. Maybe we can do something different, but they're just, I sent them this piece of paper and I gave them all the information. They just need to fill out this thing and start working toward it. So it's like they're trying. What's happening is Goddard, from my understanding, when I talked to their lawyer, they want to avoid having a conditional use permit application where people can come in and say stuff. And I just think that that's not okay. Even if we have to do a blanket conditional use where they say we want to do this with a hay barn and this with this and this and this and this, and then we just go through and do this permit that's kind of all encompassing, and then if they want to change something they're doing in one of the buildings, they just have to come in. I mean, we could figure out language, but we have to allow the town of Plainfield residents to have a say.
Right. Well, the other thing, the other thing Liam Murphy didn't want is to have to do every time they change anything to do redo a conditional use permit. If they're broad enough in what they say with like the hay barn and the offices, and their part of their reason is, we don't know what everything is just yet. I don't know how to fill out the permit. Just say not applicable. Anyway.
They want to avoid too much conditional use because they're worried about appeals.
Yeah, but
probably
we got, I think they can handle it.
You would think, we have lots of controversy in town, but I've not heard a lot of controversy about development, the kind of development they're doing. And, that may change in the future. I don't know.
Yeah.
But,
anyway.
But my thought is, if it's been a restaurant, it can continue to be a restaurant. If it's been a theater, continue to be a theater. If it's been a residential thing, okay, maybe having a conference center might be something we need to talk about, because there wasn't a conference center there before. So we need to have this conversation.
Right. So I'll send Mike an email and say, let's get on it. Karen's got a couple of times. Just how do we, once you're at the camp, do we send up like a carrier pigeon or like a flare?
What I have to do is walk up to my, I can check my zoning email every day. It's just, I can't, you know what I mean?
Okay.
I'd like to
Oh, that's all. If you could just check it.
But I like 10 in the morning, not 7 in the afternoon.
I saw that the select board denied the application.
That's what started this whole thing.
Well, you think that would give them some incentive.
It did. It did.
Oh, it did.
Oh, absolutely.
Good.
It freaked out. Yeah. They went all ballistic.
I'm sorry to say that I didn't have another choice.
Right. In that meeting with Liam, he wanted us to have a special, zoning district and all this stuff. And we were just in the middle of trying to adopt what we were doing. Give us a break,
That's the kind of thing. It's not. I don't think it's a horrible idea, but it could, it could give us a year.
We're having trouble just defining applicants for goodness sake. Come on. Okay, so that's it. That's it.
All right.
I'll give the letter in part of the NDA application. That should go along. And I'll contact Mike and get that ball rolling and let you know when we can want to meet in the next 2 weeks, get it done. And I'll try to fine tune that applicant a little bit. It shouldn't be that difficult. It shouldn't be. Okay, so let's have a motion to adjourn.
I just want.
Oh, here we go.
Not,
So, but
not
send
for
it to
discussion,
send it to Plainfield DA.
Okay.
for future discussion.
Send it to
Yeah,
Plainfield DA, the
thing
email.
about the lawyer.
Hold on. Karen, go ahead.
Send it to the Plainfield ZA email
Oh, okay.
about
Yeah,
Mike.
not the Yahoo mail. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, just,
Or
for future discussion, as we keep talking about the subdivision regs, the lawyer clause, I think we should, work on that, or I can't find where in the clean copy where it says state permits are required. There's something about complying with state regulations,
Okay.
but it doesn't say have all state permits that I could find. It's
Okay.
hard to,
Yeah, it is.
someday I'll explain to Riley how hard it is.
He'll correct it.
And then I want to talk a little bit about what the time frame for approval of each step is. Because by cutting out the middle step, it becomes well, particularly the sketch plan review, there's more to each thing if there's no middle step. And I want to make sure it feels like there's enough time for the DRB, because it's a big job.
Yeah.
If the DRB does a good job of doing all of that stuff that they're supposed to do and review, somebody's away for 2 weeks and it's like, so anyway, for future conversation.
And
I do want
What was
to
that, Karen?
bring up the fact of the Barish subdivision.
yeah, I mean, there's one where it's hard to know who the applicant is.
Well, we know who the applicant is, but the thing is, it came in November, and the DRB is still working on it, and it's August.
Yeah, and I wonder, isn't there a time limit when the DRB has to make a decision or it loses? But it's continuing the hearing, though. That's the thing. Every time, every meeting, they continue the hearing. So it's not inaction. It's just continuing for more information. So
which is being
well, in the regs they have to respond to the sketch plan hearing within 30 days.
Yes.
And
well.
So could be tough.
Yeah,
I think
the Barish is though. I think we're okay here. Yeah,
that would complicate.
The Barish came in before the new regs.
Yeah.
Right. So
right.
The Barishes are like the sketch plan. It's a discussion over a waiver that the subdivision asked for. The applicant, which is the state of Robert Barish. So I'm just saying, like, time frames, if everything's going well, can be 3 months or whatever. But in a situation where there's DRB continues to ask for more information, or ask for some sort of mediation, or ask for some thing so that they can follow through, it can take a lot longer, even if the sketch plan comes in well, because you can still ask for more information. So the time frame is really based on complete application and the DRB not wanting more information, and then maybe the negotiation that has to happen to get it done. So I'm just saying, like, you can't always make it shorter. It might take a long time.
Yeah, right. But as like in the Barish thing, the process is starting. You get to this point, you say, well, we can't act because it's not complete yet. If everything's complete, then we're done. But the extension is based on, like you say, incomplete information. And so if everything's completed at once, then it can move slowly. But if everything is,
on the sketch plan.
Yeah, that if it's not there, well, if you don't have enough information in the sketch plan, don't apply yet.
Right.
I mean, that's one option.
Right.
Right. There's still the waiver situation. But there's the waiver situation, because in a sketch plan, you can ask for waivers. And it's the DRB has to grant those waivers. So you have to have really good evidence that that the waiver can be granted. So in the situation with the Barish, there's a waiver that's being asked for, and there's a discussion about whether or not that waiver can be granted. And the DRB, instead of wanting to say no, that waiver can't be granted, they're trying to get the group to work together so they don't have to deny the waiver, which then throws the subdivision to the has to be started over again. So it's between the parties deciding to continue as they work out how to resolve the waiver problem.
Yeah, the Barish
So it's how
subdivision,
much, if you're asking for waivers,
that situation hopefully is an outlier. They don't all go that way.
well, no, but it's like I have 3 subdivisions that have waivers that say that they waive like the wastewater permit, they waive the stormwater, and ever. So whenever the person who buys the lot comes in, they have to fulfill all those waivers. So there's still a next step, even when a waiver is granted, it eventually has to be dealt with through the zoning if it's written into the regulation. So it can be a lot more complicated than just going through.
It's complicated.
Yeah. Okay.
Which has nothing to do with applicant and owner.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
All right, sorry.
Well, thanks for coming, and I'll be in touch with the Goddard thing. And so a motion to adjourn?
Okay.
Sure. Okay.
Motion.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Okay, now I guess.